Name's Michelle Shell like the sea, red as a firecracker. My grandmother used to say that to me when she'd tug my braids tight and wink like we shared a crime. 6 red-haired women in a family means luck forever, she'd add, tapping my forehead as if the universe were a jukebox and luck would drop if you hit it just right. I didn't believe in luck. I believed in grocery lists, coupons, and timing the rotisserie chickens when they marked them down. But I did believe in tradition, and mine was simple. Every Saturday, same supermarket, same clerk with glitter nails, same $2 for a lottery ticket. Not because I'm a gambler, but because my husband was. Not the ruin your house kind, just the sweet kind. The baby, we might hit it big and buy a boat, we'll never use kind. After he died, I kept the ritual like a candle you don't let the wind bully out. This Saturday started wrong. I woke before dawn with a weight on my chest I didn't recognize. You know that feeling like you've walked into a room and forgotten why, except the room is your life. Then the dream came, quick as a slap. Grandma, red hair blazing like she'd stolen sunset from the sky, lay in the very same coffin I'd cried over at 20. I stepped closer, certain I was trespassing on something holy, and she sat up as easy as you and me at breakfast. She opened her eyes, and there was that same dry humor, the same look she gave me when I came home at 17 with grass stains on my knees and a ribbon half-tied in my hair. "Don't let him kiss you too quickly," she said, smoothing hair that wasn't there anymore. "Make him win your love, baby. Make them all earn it." I snapped awake with my heart pounding like a bad drummer. I made coffee, black and bossy, pulled on my jeans, and drove to the supermarket earlier than the sun meant to. I should have waited for my usual time traditions like their lanes, but I went. And the clerk with glitter nails said, "Early bird, Miss Michelle?" Worms got my name on it, I told her, and slid the change from my bread and eggs across the counter. $2. A ritual, not a plan. I baked that morning like a woman making her own weather. Lemon cake with a glaze bright enough to wake a room, grilled chicken, green beans with the sass cooked out of them, and mashed potatoes the way he used to like, extra butter, no apologies. By evening I had the draw show humming from the TV, the house smelling like Sunday after church, and the ticket tucked under my palm. When the numbers rolled, they marched out like soldiers who already knew my name. Everything on the screen was on my ticket. I didn't scream. I went still, the still you get right before a storm when every tree holds its breath. 7 million. I said it out loud just to see if my walls would fall down. 7 million. Do you know what that is to a widow who keeps her receipts in neat envelopes and amortizes guilt like a mortgage? It's oxygen. It's room. And then because I'm the kind of woman who laughs before she cries, I called Michael. Michael has been my friend for 22 years. He used to be my husband's fishing buddy, one of those gentle men who never made a mess in your kitchen and always put the lid back on the sugar. Since my husband passed, he's been my +1 to things I didn't want to go to, my muscle for jars that refuse to behave, my occasional fence painter and grocery carrier, and the reliable voice on the phone that says, "You okay, Red?" He thinks I don't notice the way he watches me smile like I invented the sun. I notice. I just keep that knowledge folded small. I have my reasons. He arrived with wildflowers in a pickle jar and a grin that made the years step aside. "You sounded like you'd swallowed lightning," he said, setting the jar down. "What's the news?" I handed him the ticket. He read it once, twice. He went quiet the way men do when their pride is taking a knee so their joy can sprint. Then he whooped, this full-body sound that shook the cabinets, and I whooped with him. We jumped in my kitchen like kids without the knees to support it. He swung me around and I let him, my cheeks hot, my ribs loud with laughter. He kept looking at me like a man looks at the first daylight after a long winter. And every wrinkle in my face, the laugh lines my daughters call proof you lived a good life, he loved each one with his eyes. If you've never had a man love your wrinkles, you haven't lived all the way yet. 7 million, he breathed, and pressed his forehead to mine for one soft, reverent second. Then he stepped back, decent as always. He knows my lines. I drew them in grief and I've kept them in ink. We ate too fast, talked too loud, made lists we tore up, then made new ones. I told him I'd fix the porch steps and finally get a dishwasher that didn't sound like it was chewing rocks. I told him I'd endow a scholarship in my husband's name at the tech school he loved. Michael kept saying, yes. He kept saying, do that. He kept saying, I'm so damn happy for you, I can't stand it. After dessert, the lemon cake did what it was born to do. It made us believe in second chances. I reached for my phone. I should tell the girls, I said. Pride and habit pushed me. A mother shares. A mother's joy is a communal sport. Michael's hand, warm and careful, covered mine. Red, he said quietly. Hold a second. Don't you dare talk to me about taxes. I joked, but his eyes were not in the mood for math. They were in the mood for truth. Don't tell them yet, he said. Not tonight. I stiffened. My daughters and I are fine. Not bad, not estranged, just a bit like planets that used to share an orbit and now keep their distance because nobody wants a collision. I have given and I have forgiven. I have babysat last minute and I have been forgotten on birthdays and I have cooked casseroles for their friends' kids because their mothers were better at Pinterest. I love them like lungs love air no matter how polluted it gets. You still breathe. But 7 million is a new atmosphere, and I knew it. Why not? I asked, my voice the kind I use when someone tries to skip a line at the deli counter. Because, he said, and the face he made told me he was about to ask me to touch an electric fence. Because I want you to run an experiment first. An experiment? I laughed, but it snagged on something inside me. I'm not in a lab coat, darling. It's simple, he said. Call them separately. Don't mention the lottery. Tell each one you've been to the doctor. Say you need an expensive operation. See who rushes to you first. Not with advice, not with excuses. With themselves. I stared at him. I wanted to be offended on cue, but the truth did that awful polite thing where it knocked and waited to be let in. My daughters are good women in a hard world. They're also busy with themselves. The years have chiseled us into shapes that don't always fit together. And somewhere in that sculpting, I became convenient more than beloved. You want me to lie, I said. I want you to know, he said, and there was no triumph in it, only protection. It isn't the same. He wasn't wrong. He wasn't right either. He was giving me a door to walk through, and on the other side might be cold air I didn't want. But I am a woman who has scrubbed floors and buried a husband and learned how to lift heavy things at awkward angles without breaking my heart included. If I could hold a ticket that changed my life, I could hold a phone that changed my mind. I wiped my hands on a towel, folded it neat, and took a breath. All right, I said. We'll do it your way. Tonight? Michael nodded and sat back, eyes on my face like he was witnessing a vow. I scrolled to my eldest. Her contact photo is from a decade ago, when we still believed birthdays needed balloons and not just group texts. My thumb hovered. The TV murmured in the background about the winning numbers again, like the universe wanted to be sure I was listening. Either way, Michael said softly, you'll know who's in your boat when the water gets choppy. I hit call. The ringtone felt longer than Lent. The kitchen clock ticked like it had an opinion. On the third ring, she picked up. Mom, she said, distracted already. Can I call you back? We're just walking into sweetheart, I said, steady as a surgeon. It's important. I've come from the doctor. Silence, sharp and bright. Mom, she said, voice tightening. What happened? I looked at Michael, his jaw working, eyes kind and fierce both. And I told my eldest the story we'd agreed to tell, the one that would show me not the depth of their wallets or their calendars, but the length of their reach. And right there, with the lemon cake cooling, the lucky ticket sleeping under the salt shaker, and my grandmother's voice still warm in my ear, don't let them kiss you too quickly. Make them win your love, I heard my daughter inhale to answer. Her breath was tight on the other end of the line. That kind of shallow sound you make when you're not sure whether to panic or pretend. Doctor, she said, the way people say thunder when they think the storm will pass them by. Yes, I said, letting my voice tremble just enough to sell the script. They found something. It's not well. They're not sure yet. But it looks like I'll need surgery. It's expensive. $10,000 expensive. There was a beat. A silence so thin I could almost see through it. Then she exhaled sharply and said, Mom, we don't have any money. You know the mortgage, the car payments, and the boys with their soccer trips. I can't even pay for my own dentist appointment right now. You'll have to figure it out yourself. Maybe your insurance will cover it. Or maybe you could ask Aunt Rita? I could feel the words slice, neat and cold. I kept my voice soft. I see. Don't worry, sweetheart. I'll manage somehow. Good, she said quickly, relief spilling through her tone. Listen, I'm in the checkout line. I'll call you tomorrow, okay? Of course, I said, but she was already gone. I stared at the phone, thumb hovering over the screen, and for a second the room tilted. Michael reached across the table and laid his hand over mine, his eyes steady. That was one, he said gently. I laughed. Not the happy kind. The kind you make when you step on something sharp and pretend it didn't hurt. Let's make it two. I called my younger daughter. She picked up on the first ring, bless her, and said, Mom, you okay? That almost undid me. Almost. I've been to the doctor, I said again. Careful, same words, same tremor. They found something. They said I'll need surgery, about 10,000. I hate to even say it. Oh, Mom, she said, her voice thick with worry, but then the pivot. That's so awful. How much money do you need exactly? I should talk to Carl, but we're stretched thin. You know, with daycare and the student loans and, Lord, even groceries feel like a ransom note these days. You should ask your insurance, or maybe a medical credit card. They do those now. Don't worry, I murmured. I just needed to hear your voice. Of course, she said brightly, already halfway gone. I'll call you this weekend, okay? Sure, I said. You take care of those babies. I hung up. The phone was heavier than before, like it knew too much. Michael's face was careful. He didn't gloat. He looked pained, like he'd hoped to be wrong. I'm sorry, Red, he said softly. I took a long breath and squared my shoulders. Don't be. The truth's a favor, even when it hurts. We sat in silence, just the hum of the refrigerator filling the air. I wanted to cry, but that's not my style. Tears don't fix the plumbing. Instead, I got up, took out 2 glasses, poured us each a little bourbon, and raised mine. 2 experiments, I said. May they hurt less than they heal. He clinked his glass to mine. You've got the kind of backbone they write songs about. You know that? Yeah, I said, sipping, but they'd make it a country song. And I can't stand banjos. That made him laugh, and for a few seconds, I could breathe again. Then my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I frowned and picked up. Grandma? The voice was young, warm, and cracking just slightly. Bobby, my youngest daughter's boy. Mom told me you're sick. Is it bad? What's the doctor saying? Oh, sweetheart, I said, startled. It's just, they're still testing. Don't you worry. Worry, he said, voice rising. Grandma, Mom said you need 10,000 for an operation. I've got 2 saved up. I can borrow another 2 from my girlfriend or sell the car. I'll come to you tonight. Bobby, absolutely not, I said, choking on the words. You're a student, for heaven's sake. You need that money. Grandma, he said, and his voice dropped low, the way his grandfather used to sound when he meant business. You and Grandpa helped Mom when she was starting out. You sent money when we needed rent. You taught me to drive. You showed me how to fix a leaky faucet. Don't you dare tell me I can't help you. I couldn't answer. I just pressed the phone to my chest for a moment, like I could hold the sound of him close. Michael watched me, eyes soft. He's coming, isn't he? Yes, I whispered. He's coming. And he did. The next afternoon, an old Honda pulled into my driveway with a sound like a prayer limping its way to heaven. Bobby climbed out, taller than I remembered, still with that nervous energy that reminded me of a puppy that hadn't quite grown into its paws. He hugged me hard, like he was afraid I might vanish. Grandma, you look okay, he said, pulling back. Well, I said, touching my hair. I try not to look sick even when I'm pretending to be. He blinked. Pretending? I waved him off. Come in, you'll catch your death out here. He came in, set his duffel down, and laid $4,000 in cash on my table. Crumpled bills, mostly 20s. Here, he said simply. It's not much, but it's yours. I wanted to tell him everything: the lottery, the experiment, the heartbreak, but something in me held back. I wanted to see what this moment could become without the weight of the truth. We spent the afternoon talking. I made him sandwiches. He told me about school, about a girl named Lily who loved painting murals and laughing too loud. He confessed he wanted to marry her someday, but couldn't even afford an engagement ring, let alone a place of their own. I'm still in the dorm, he said, flushing. Can't ask a woman to marry a man who shares a bathroom with 4 guys who think deodorant is optional. I laughed until tears ran down my face. Oh, sweetheart, I said, you don't need a palace. You need a promise. The rest comes later. That night, after he fell asleep on my couch, I checked my bank account. The lottery money had cleared 7 million, cold and real. The zeros lined up like a row of obedient soldiers. I looked at Bobby, his hair mussed, one arm flung over his face, and I knew exactly what I would do. The next morning, before the world was properly awake, I made the first of several secret calls. I paid off his entire student loan. It took 1 hour, 1 wire transfer, 1 quiet smile. The bank clerk, bless her soul, asked, "Would you like to notify the recipient?" "No," I said. "Let's make it a surprise." Life doesn't hand out enough of those. By the time Bobby woke, I had breakfast ready and the whole world was already different. He just didn't know it yet. "Grandma," he said, grinning, "you make the best pancakes on this side of heaven." I winked. "Don't say that until you taste the syrup. I might have spiked it with luck." He laughed, but I saw something in his eyes, a light that hadn't been there before, the kind that said he still believed in good things. And I thought to myself, maybe Grandma was right after all. Maybe red-haired women really are the luckiest, especially when they make their own kind of miracles. Then my phone rang again, and the look on Bobby's face told me he'd seen the caller ID before I did. It was his mother, and she was about to find out that the universe has a wicked sense of timing. When I saw my younger daughter's name blinking on the screen, I felt that little sting behind the ribs, the one that warns you you're about to hear something you don't want to, but you'll listen anyway. Bobby mouthed, "Mom," and I nodded, motioning for him to go finish his pancakes. He lingered, curious, but I gave him that look only grandmothers can give, soft eyes, steel spine. He obeyed. "Hi, sweetheart," I said into the phone, my tone sweet as pie and twice as dangerous. "Mom," she said, her voice trembling like she'd been running. "You won't believe what happened." "Oh, honey," I said, letting her wind herself up. "You sound excited." "It's Bobby. Someone just paid off his entire student loan completely. The bank called to confirm. They wouldn't say who, but it's done. He's free, Mom. Isn't that incredible?" I pressed my lips together to keep from smiling. "Well, that's something, isn't it? Maybe some kind of scholarship?" "That's what I thought," she said quickly. "But they said it was a lump sum payment, straight from a personal account. No name attached." She paused. "You don't think it's a scam, do you?" "Sweetheart," I said with a chuckle, "the only scam here is life charging us double for wisdom." She laughed a little, nervous. "You're probably right. Wow, I can't believe it." "He was crying," Mom said. "It felt like karma catching up." "You remember that story you used to tell him about karma being a boomerang with lipstick?" "I do," I said softly, and I told him it always finds its way home. When I hung up, Bobby was watching me from the doorway, his plate empty and his eyes wide. "Grandma," he said quietly, "you didn't." I pretended to study the syrup bottle. "Didn't what, dear?" "Pay it off. My loan. You didn't, right?" I turned to him and smiled, that little smile my grandmother used when she was about to outfox the devil himself. "Now, Bobby," I said, "some things don't need names attached. Sometimes the world just balances itself." He looked at me for a long moment, like he wanted to believe in magic but suspected I was the magician. Then he grinned. "You're something else, Grandma. Don't you forget it," I said, giving his shoulder a playful tap. That afternoon he went back to campus, lighter than I'd ever seen him. I watched his car disappear down the road and thought about how love, when it's quiet and precise, can still change the course of a life. 3 days later, he called again, this time sounding half breathless, half bewildered. "Grandma," he said, "you're not gonna believe this." Remember that ring I was saving for Lily? I went to the store website a few days ago to look at it again. And guess what? Today a courier showed up at my door with that exact ring. They said I'd been the 100,000th visitor and it was a promotional gift. It's beautiful, Grandma. Exactly the one I wanted. I smiled so hard my cheeks ached. Well, sweetheart, sounds like the universe is trying to tell you something. That's what I thought, he said, his voice shaking with awe. You think I should? Yes, I said before he could finish. Go to her. Don't wait for the next excuse life hands you. And when she says yes, and she will send me a picture. I want proof. He laughed, and it was pure, unguarded joy. Okay, Grandma, you're the best. When I hung up, the house felt alive again, like the walls were humming. I took out my checkbook and smiled at the next little miracle I planned to make. That evening, as I was folding laundry and pretending not to cry at the sound of my husband's favorite old record, my phone chimed. It was a photo. Lily's hand, ring gleaming, her nails painted red like my grandmother's hair. The caption, she said yes. I covered my mouth, laughing through my tears, and then sent my reply, congratulations, my sweet boy. Love deserves a home. Check your account. Wedding gift 100. Don't argue. 5 minutes later, my phone rang again. Grandma, you didn't. I interrupted. Hush, I told you karma wears lipstick. Now go kiss your fiancé and start a new life. He was crying, and I felt it through the phone. I don't know how to thank you. By living well, I said, and never forgetting who showed up when you thought no one would. After we hung up, I poured myself a glass of wine and sat on the porch. The stars were crisp and smug, like they knew secrets. I could almost hear my grandmother's voice on the wind. Make them earn your love, baby. But when you find the ones who do, love them like fire. A week later, I got a call from my eldest. Her tone was sharp, the kind that could slice fruit and feelings alike. Mom, she said, I just talked to Jenny, your granddaughter, and she said Bobby's got a ring, a wedding planned, and a house deposit sitting in his bank account. Where's that coming from? I played dumb, my favorite card. Oh, I wouldn't know, sweetheart. Maybe the girl's family? Don't play coy, she said, her voice tightening. I saw the transfer details. The money came from your town. Same bank. You didn't give him that, did you? When we're barely managing to, I cut her off, calm and cold. You didn't ask me for help, dear. Remember? Silence. Then a brittle little laugh. That was different. No, I said softly. It was exactly the same. She hung up without another word. I leaned back, let the night air settle around me, and smiled. The truth has a way of shaking loose all the pretenses we build around love. It shows you who's clinging for comfort and who's holding on for you. Later that evening, Michael came by, holding a poinsettia plant and 2 cups of hot cocoa. Heard the engagement news, he said. Our boy did good. He did, I said. And I've got a few more tricks up my sleeve for that wedding day. He laughed. That low, warm sound that always fills the corners of a room. I don't doubt it. Just don't start a revolution while I'm gone. Oh, darling, I said, smiling wickedly. It's already started. They just don't know it yet. And with that, we sat together under the soft hum of Christmas lights, both of us pretending not to notice how close our hands were. Because in the corner of that December evening, I swear I felt it, fate rearranging its furniture, getting ready for a bigger surprise. The following morning, I woke up to a war brewing in the family group chat. Now, I'm not a woman who enjoys drama, but I've learned to appreciate it the way you'd admire a thunderstorm from the porch, drink in hand, where it can't soak you. At 7:02 a.m., my phone was vibrating like it had something to confess. Messages were flying between my daughters, and even my granddaughters had joined the chaos. Eldest daughter, someone is sending money to Bobby. Big money, from grandma's town. We need to find out what's going on. Younger daughter, Mom doesn't have that kind of money. Don't start rumors. Eldest daughter, don't be naive. She's hiding something. Jenny, eldest granddaughter, wait, grandma's been quiet on here. Maybe ask her instead of fighting? I sipped my coffee and smiled. I always said Jenny had more sense than the rest of them put together. I didn't answer right away. I let them stew a little. If there's one thing motherhood teaches you, it's timing. Never interrupt your children while they're revealing their true selves. By the time I finally typed, the chat was a battlefield of emojis and passive-aggressive punctuation. Me, good morning, ladies. Just had my oatmeal and read the book of Job. Makes me grateful for peace and quiet. What's all this fuss about Bobby? You could have heard the collective gasp through the Wi-Fi. Eldest daughter, Mom, please don't dodge the question. Did you send him money? Me, define send. Younger daughter, Mom, be serious. We're worried. Me, worried? About Bobby? The boy's finally getting his life together. You should be proud. Eldest daughter, we are proud. But where's the money coming from? I paused just long enough for their nerves to fray, then typed, me, wouldn't it be something if God decided to pay off debts and fund weddings for good-hearted boys? Then I added a winking emoji and went offline. Oh, the satisfaction of leaving them hanging pure art. That afternoon, Michael stopped by again, this time with a brown paper bag that smelled of cinnamon and mischief. Brought donuts, he said. Figured we'd need sustenance if your daughters start a full-blown investigation. I laughed so hard I nearly spilled my tea. You know, I'm starting to think you've got a touch of psychic in you. He sat down across from me, eyes twinkling. They'll simmer down eventually. Eventually, I agreed, biting into a donut. But not before they've called every cousin, neighbor, and grocery clerk in town trying to track down the mysterious benefactor. You really don't feel guilty? He asked, though there was admiration in his tone. Michael, I said, licking a bit of glaze from my thumb, I've spent my whole life giving where I was asked, not where it mattered. I'm done feeling guilty for loving the ones who actually show up. He leaned back, studying me. You're something else, Red. You know that? Don't I though? I grinned. Christmas crept closer, and with it came the wedding planning frenzy. Bobby and Lily wanted a small ceremony backyard, fairy lights, a few friends. But word travels fast in small towns, and by the end of the week, the guest list had doubled. Michael offered to help with decorations, and since I'm not foolish enough to turn down a man who knows how to untangle Christmas lights without swearing, I said yes. We spent the day hanging garlands and arguing about color palettes like two contestants on a home renovation show. Around noon, he handed me a thermos of cocoa and said, "You've got that look again." What look? The one you get when you're plotting something. Maybe I am, I said, smiling. You'll see at the wedding. He shook his head, chuckling. You and your secrets. One day you'll have to tell me what's going on inside that red head. Maybe sooner than you think, I murmured. We were standing in the supermarket later that day, picking up more string lights. The aisles smelled of pine and gingerbread, and Christmas music was crooning from every corner. Then, as if the universe had been listening to some cosmic script, we both stopped under a hanging sprig of mistletoe by the frozen foods section. He noticed it first, pointed up, and raised an eyebrow. Well now, would you look at that? I laughed, a little too quickly. Tradition says, he interrupted softly, you're supposed to kiss. He didn't move closer, just waited, calm and certain. For a moment, I thought of my dream grandma sitting up in that coffin, her red hair blazing, telling me not to let anyone kiss me too quickly. Make him win your love. Well, this man had waited 22 years without asking for anything but my company. I figured he'd earned a kiss by now. So I stood on my toes, cupped his face, and kissed him. It wasn't wild or dramatic, just warm, quiet, inevitable. Like slipping into a song you've known all your life. When I pulled back, he smiled that shy smile of his, the one that always made my heart behave like a teenager's. Merry Christmas, Red, he whispered. Merry Christmas, Michael, I said. Now put those lights in the cart before I start regretting this. He laughed, and I swear the whole supermarket felt lighter for it. The night before the wedding, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, thinking about my husband, about how he would have loved this, his grandson's happiness, the laughter, the small miracle of family finding its way back together. Then I thought about Michael, about how life sometimes sneaks in a second chance when you're busy mourning the first. I smiled into the dark and whispered, Grandma, you were right again. Love's worth waiting for, but only if you know when to stop waiting. And with that, I drifted off to sleep, dreaming of fairy lights, wedding bells, and the look on everyone's faces when they heard what I was about to say at that ceremony. Because, oh honey, I had a speech prepared that would shake every drop of entitlement right out of that family tree. The morning of Bobby's wedding came dressed in gold. You know that kind of day, the air sharp and clear, the sky trying to prove it's the most beautiful thing you'll see. But it wasn't. The most beautiful thing was that boy, my grandson, standing under the arbor Michael and I had built from old barnwood, his hands shaking just enough to remind me that he was still someone's child. The backyard looked like heaven had borrowed my Pinterest board. Fairy lights draped between the trees, soft music floating through the air, and that smell, oh Lord, that perfect mix of roses, sugar, and nervous excitement. I'd ordered the food from the same grocery store where I bought that fateful lottery ticket. A full circle sort of mischief. I wore emerald green, because redheads have no business fading into beige. Michael wore his best suit and that crooked smile that could charm rust off an old truck. He offered me his arm as we walked to our seats, whispering, "Ready to start some trouble, darling?" I said, adjusting my pearls. I was born in it. The ceremony began. Lily floated down the aisle like she was made of sunlight, her father trying hard not to cry. Bobby's eyes never left her, and for a moment I thought, this is it, this is what love's supposed to look like. Not perfect, just real. Two souls choosing each other in a world full of distractions. When the officiant asked if anyone objected, Michael leaned close and whispered, "Don't you dare." As if I'd ruin good cake, I muttered back. Everyone laughed when they kissed, because the boy actually fist-pumped the air afterward. Youth has no idea how contagious it can be. And then it was time for dinner and speeches. Oh, honey, I'd been waiting for this. I stood up, glass in hand, and the chatter quieted. My daughters were seated at the same table, avoiding each other's eyes. They hadn't stopped arguing for weeks about the mysterious money trail, though tonight they were putting on their best civilized family faces. I smiled slow and deliberate, the kind of smile that announces trouble before it speaks. "Family," I began. That's a big word for 5 little letters, isn't it? We think it means blood, but sometimes it just means showing up. Every head turned toward me. I could feel the curiosity ripple across the crowd. "I want to tell you all a story," I said. "A few weeks ago, I thought my luck had run out. I kept a little tradition alive, buying a lottery ticket at the same store my husband and I used to visit every Saturday. And wouldn't you know it, this old woman hit the jackpot." Gasps! I heard forks drop. My eldest daughter went white as the tablecloth. "Yes," I continued, $7 million. And before anyone asks, no, I didn't tell my children. I wanted to see something first. I wanted to know who'd be there for me if all I had was trouble instead of fortune. A murmur swept through the guests. My daughters exchanged looks that could curdle cream. So, I said, I made a few phone calls. I said I needed surgery, expensive, serious, and I waited to see who'd come running. I paused, letting the silence thicken. Neither of my daughters came, I said gently, not cruelly, but one young man who didn't have $1 to spare offered to sell his car to help me. He filled his tank with his last 200 and drove across 3 states because he thought his grandmother was dying. Now, Bobby's eyes were wet, and Lily reached for his hand. I realized that love isn't about who shares your DNA, it's about who shares your heart when it's breaking. And that's why, today, I'm giving a small wedding gift. My eldest muttered, "Oh, no," under her breath. I ignored her. To my grandson and his beautiful bride, I gift the deed to my house. A collective gasp rolled through the yard. I've lived in that house for 40 years, I said, voice steady. It's got memories in every corner, and it deserves laughter again. You two are the future, and I'm moving somewhere smaller, maybe near the ocean, where I can learn to paint badly and annoy Michael. Michael squeezed my hand at that, grinning like a fool. The crowd erupted in applause, but my daughters sat frozen. My eldest spoke first, her voice sharp as glass. "Mother, that's insane. You can't just." "I can," I said. "I just did." The younger one tried a softer approach. "Mom, at least talk to us before making big financial decisions." I looked her right in the eye. I tried, sweetheart. You hung up on me when I said I needed help. Her face crumpled, and for once, she didn't have a comeback. After the speeches, people danced under the lights, and laughter washed away most of the tension. My daughters eventually joined in. Guilt has a funny way of loosening its grip when there's champagne involved. Michael and I sat at the edge of it all, watching the newlyweds twirl. You handled that like a queen, he said. Please, I said, fanning myself. More like a red-haired general. He laughed. So, what's next for you, now that you've handed over your castle? I looked out at Bobby and Lily, glowing under the fairy lights. I think it's time I stopped keeping promises to ghosts. He turned to me, serious now. Red, are you saying what I think you're saying? I tilted my head. I'm saying there's a lot of living left to do, and I'm tired of doing it alone. For a long moment, we just sat there, the night humming around us. Then he reached for my hand and said softly, then let's not waste another second. And I, for once, didn't argue, because that kiss under the mistletoe wasn't the end of something old, it was the beginning of something I hadn't dared to dream about in years. But oh, life wasn't done surprising me yet, not by a long shot. Because as the wedding wound down, my eldest daughter came marching toward me, her heels stabbing the grass like accusations. Mother, she hissed, we need to talk. Now. I took one last sip of champagne, smiled sweetly, and said, of course, darling, but if you're about to make a scene, at least wait until I've got another drink in my hand. My eldest, bless her heart, had inherited my temper but none of my timing. She came storming toward me like Justice in high heels, face tight, lipstick trembling with fury. It was the kind of entrance you'd expect before someone flips a table on a reality show. I took another delicate sip of champagne, just to buy her the chance to collect herself. No such luck. Mother, she hissed, I can't believe you humiliated us like that. At his wedding, of all places. I tilted my head, smiling the way I used to when she was 3 and thought she could negotiate bedtime. Sweetheart, if telling the truth humiliates you, maybe you've been living too close to a lie. Her jaw dropped. That's not fair. You lied to us. You made up an illness. An experiment, I corrected. A controlled observation of affection under pressure. An experiment? You treated your family like lab rats. I set down my glass, slow and calm. My dear, rats at least check on each other in a maze. The crowd was too busy dancing to notice our little mother-daughter showdown under the fairy lights. Michael, from a distance, caught my eye and gave a subtle need backup. Look, I shook my head. This was my battle, and I'd been preparing for it all my life. Mom, she said, her voice breaking now, I was just overwhelmed that day. I didn't mean to hang up. I thought you were exaggerating. And now you're embarrassed, I said, not unkindly. That's fine. Growth never comes in pretty wrapping. Her eyes shimmered, but I saw the shame underneath the anger. You could have told me, she whispered. You could have trusted me. I did trust you, I said softly. I trusted you to show me who you were. And you did. She turned away, and I let her go. Sometimes love means not chasing people who aren't ready to face their reflection. I found Michael by the buffet, stealing chocolate-covered strawberries like a guilty teenager. You always know when to appear, I said, sliding beside him. I figured you'd need sugar after that, he said, handing me one. We stood there watching Bobby and Lily dance barefoot in the grass. My heart, for once, felt light not from money, or justice, or revenge, but from clarity. You know, I said, I used to think wealth was measured in what you could buy. Turns out it's really measured in who would spend their last dollar just to stand beside you. Michael smiled. You're one wise woman. I wasn't always, I admitted, but pain's a hell of a teacher. He took my hand. And what has it taught you tonight? That some lessons are worth celebrating, I said, and kissed him this time in front of everyone. Applause broke out. Laughter, even a few whistles. Bobby lifted his glass in a toast from the dance floor, grinning like the rascal he was. About time, Grandma, he shouted. I laughed until my ribs ached. Later, after the guests had left and the moon was resting lazy over the trees, I sat on the porch with Michael. The fairy lights were still glowing faintly, and the house I'd just given away stood behind me, full of laughter that didn't belong to ghosts anymore. "You sure you're ready to leave it?" Michael asked gently. "I've lived my whole life inside walls built for someone else's comfort," I said. "It's time I build something that fits me." He nodded. "And where do you think that'll be?" I looked up at the sky, at all that endless blue pretending to be black. "Maybe near the ocean," I said. "I've always liked places that don't apologize for being loud." He chuckled. "You'd fit right in." I smiled. "You know, I never thought I'd love again." "Neither did I," he said quietly. "But then again, I never stopped loving you." For a moment, the night went perfectly still. I turned to face him. "Michael," he reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. "Oh, Lord," I whispered, half laughing, half crying. "Don't tell me you." He opened it. Inside was a simple gold ring, elegant, unpretentious, just like him. "I bought it the day after our mistletoe kiss," he said. "Didn't know when I'd give it to you. Thought maybe at the wedding, but then you went and gave away your house and stole the show." I laughed through my tears. "Well, I've always had a flair for bad timing." He took my hand. "So here's me catching up. Michelle, will you marry me?" The words floated into the air and seemed to hang there, glowing like the fireflies in the garden. I thought of Grandma's voice, that dream of her in the coffin, red hair blazing, saying, "Don't let him kiss you too quickly. Make him win your love." "Well," I said, pretending to think, "I did make you wait 22 years. I suppose you've earned it." And then I said yes, not the timid yes of a young girl, but the steady, triumphant yes of a woman who's lost, learned, and lived. He slid the ring on my finger. It fit like it had been waiting its whole life to find me. The next morning, I woke to the smell of coffee and the sound of my daughters laughing softly in the kitchen. That, more than anything, was my miracle. They'd stayed the night out of guilt, maybe, or realization, or both. I didn't care. I'd take it. When I walked in, they stopped mid-laugh. My eldest looked at my ring, eyes wide. "Mom," she breathed. "You're engaged?" I smiled. "What can I say? I'm a fast learner." My younger one grinned through tears. "He finally asked?" "He did," I said, pouring myself coffee. "Under the stars." "You'd have liked it." For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then the eldest stepped forward and hugged me, the kind of hug that starts awkward and ends real. "I'm sorry," she whispered. I hugged her back. "I know, sweetheart. We all are sometimes." And just like that, the frost between us began to melt. Maybe love doesn't fix everything, but it sure gives you the courage to try again. By the time the newlyweds returned from their honeymoon, I'd sold the old Buick, packed up my photos, and found a seaside cottage with a porch big enough for stories and wine. Michael moved in 2 weeks later, pretending it was to fix the shutters. They're still broken. But my heart, that's working just fine. You'd think, after giving away a house, surviving family drama, and getting engaged at 71, life would take a breath and let a woman rest. But no, darling, life loves me too much to get boring. The seaside cottage I bought sat on a bluff just high enough to make the waves sound like applause. White shutters, porch swing, the smell of salt and promise. It was perfect if you ignored the fact that I'd never fixed a leaky roof in my life. Michael, of course, took it upon himself to be my handyman, though I suspect he just liked watching me hand him tools in my robe. We'd settled into this gentle rhythm, mornings with coffee and crossword puzzles, afternoons walking the beach collecting seashells like children, evenings filled with laughter and bourbon. The neighbors adored us. We were the newlyweds with the red-headed lady and the man who looked at her like she was his retirement plan. Still, some nights I'd stand on that porch, stare at the stars, and whisper, "You see, Grandma, you were right again." But peace has its price. My daughters called often now, cautious but trying. We'd repaired the surface cracks, dinners, check-ins, polite affection, but you can't rebuild trust with small talk. It takes action. One Sunday morning, my eldest called and said, "Mom, the boys want to visit. They miss your pancakes." I laughed. "My pancakes? or my inheritance. Mom, she said, scandalized. Kidding, I lied. When they came, it was lovely. The grandsons played on the sand, Michael grilled fish like a man possessed, and for a while, it felt like family again. No secrets, no suspicion, just laughter and sun. But as dusk fell and the waves turned copper, my eldest pulled me aside. Mom, she said, glancing toward the horizon, I've been thinking about what you said at the wedding. About showing up. I didn't, and I can't stop thinking about it. I softened. Sweetheart, I didn't say that to punish you. I know, she said, eyes wet. But it did. And maybe I needed it. I got so wrapped up in surviving, I forgot how to be your daughter. There it was, the apology I'd never dared to expect. I touched her cheek. Then here's your second chance. Don't waste it. You don't get many from me. She laughed through her tears. You're still terrifying. Good, I said. Keeps the boys respectful. A week later, Michael and I went into town to pick up wedding rings. We hadn't worn any yet. I wanted something simple. 2 bands of gold. No diamonds, no fuss. He wanted to engrave them with our initials and the words finally. I like it, I said. It's honest. While waiting for the engraving, we stopped by the same supermarket where this entire circus began. The cashier, the same glitter-nailed woman from all those years ago, gasped when she saw me. Miss Michelle, haven't seen you since you hit the jackpot. I smiled. And I've been trying to stay humble ever since. Michael chuckled beside me. She's failing spectacularly. We left with groceries, laughter, and one ridiculous mistletoe keychain the clerk insisted we take for old time's sake. Michael hung it from the rearview mirror, grinning like a teenager. You realize, he said, this thing's going to demand we kiss at every stoplight. Well, I said, good thing we've got long red lights in this town. The following evening, Bobby and Lily came to visit. Newly married, glowing like the future itself. They brought homemade cookies and a framed picture of their wedding day. You two are the reason we believe in good things, Lily said softly. Michael and I exchanged a look. Well, I said, we've made enough bad choices to recognize a good one when it shows up. Bobby hugged me tight. Grandma, we're saving to start a small art studio. Lily wants to teach kids painting. That's beautiful, I said. How much do you need? He laughed. No, Grandma, we're not asking for money. I didn't say you were, I said with a wink. I'm just asking questions. Later that night, after they'd gone, Michael looked at me over his glass of bourbon. You're going to fund that studio, aren't you? Of course, I said, quietly. I can't help it. It's genetic. Grandma started it. He smiled. You're the best kind of dangerous woman. We were married that spring, on the same beach where I'd watched my grandsons play. Just a handful of guests, soft music, the wind tangling my hair, and Michael looking at me like I'd just rewritten the ending to his life story. When the officiant said, "Do you, Michelle, take this man?" I interrupted. I do, I said. No take-backs. Everyone laughed. After the ceremony, we threw seashells into the surf instead of rice. For good luck, I told the guests. Though if Luck doesn't like sand in her shoes, she can stay home. Bobby toasted us. To Grandma Michelle and Michael, proof that karma's real and love can come late, but hit like a thunderstorm. It was perfect. Messy, funny, human, just the way love should be. That night, after everyone left, we sat on the porch again, 2 rings glinting under the moonlight. The ocean was restless, whispering things only old souls could understand. Michael reached over, laced his fingers through mine, and said, "You know, you've changed me." How so? You made me believe that endings aren't endings. They're just second chances in disguise. I smiled, rested my head on his shoulder, and whispered, "Then here's to second chances, and to anyone brave enough to take them." We watched the tide crawl up the sand, unhurried and certain. Somewhere in the distance, thunder rolled softly, like the applause of ghosts approving from the other side. I thought of Grandma again, red hair, laughter that could wake the dead, her voice echoing in my mind. Don't let them kiss you too quickly. Make them win your love. Well, Grandma, I said quietly into the night, he won, and for the first time in decades, I felt completely, gloriously at peace. The next morning, as sunlight spilled across the kitchen, I found Michael making pancakes in his robe, singing terribly off-key to an old Motown song. "Coffee's ready," he said, flipping a pancake with more enthusiasm than skill. "You're spoiling me," I said. He grinned. "No, Red, I'm just keeping up with you." And as we sat down to breakfast, I realized something simple but profound. This, right here, was the real jackpot. Not the 7 million, not the house, not even the revenge, sweet as it was. The real prize was peace. And Lord, I had earned every ounce of it. It's funny, isn't it, how life keeps its best surprises for when you finally stop waiting. A year had passed since that wild winter of miracles and confessions, and every day of it felt like dessert after a long, bitter meal. Michael and I had settled into married life like we'd been rehearsing for it forever. We weren't the type to finish each other's sentences. We interrupted them, corrected them, and laughed our way through the wreckage. We hosted Sunday dinners at the cottage because I swore I'd never stop feeding people. Bobby and Lily would drive down from the city, arms full of paints and baby news. Yes, baby news. My first great-grandchild was on the way. When they told us, I did what any self-respecting grandmother does. Cried, cursed for joy, and immediately began buying miniature socks by the dozen. "Grandma," Bobby said, hugging me tight, "we're naming her Michelle if it's a girl." I sniffed, pretending not to cry. "Well, if she ends up red-haired and stubborn, don't say I didn't warn you." My daughters, too, began to thaw. The eldest would call me every Friday just to check on the weather, which really meant checking on her conscience. The younger sent me photos of the grandkids and asked Michael's advice about fixing her porch. We'd stopped dancing around old wounds and started speaking plain again. There's freedom in the truth once you survive it. One evening, as the tide whispered its lullaby against the rocks, Michael handed me a letter. "Your mail," he said, his eyes twinkling. "Looks official." It was from the bank. The last payment on Bobby and Lily's art studio loan. Paid in full. I hadn't told them I'd done that too, but seeing that stamped finalized in red ink made me grin like a fox who just raided the henhouse. "You're still meddling, aren't you?" Michael said, amused. "Of course I am," I said, slipping the letter back into its envelope. "Love's not love if it doesn't make a little mischief." He kissed my temple. "God help anyone who tries to outwit you." "God already tried," I said. He gave up. That spring, we celebrated our first wedding anniversary. I made lemon cake, same as the day I won the lottery, because life deserves its poetry. We ate it on the porch while the sun melted into the ocean, and I said, "You know, Michael, I never told you the real reason I bought that ticket early that day." He raised an eyebrow. "Because you dreamed of your grandmother?" "Yes, but that wasn't all. The truth is I felt her nudge me awake. Like she was saying, 'Go on, girl, today's the day luck cashes in her tab.'" He smiled. And she was right. "She was," I said, touching his hand. "But not because of the money. Because of what came after. The test. The tears." You, I said firmly. "You were the real jackpot. Don't let it go to your head." He grinned. Too late. That summer, Bobby and Lily invited us to the grand opening of their art studio, The Red Thread. Named after me, of course. The place was a dream, sunlight spilling through tall windows, kids painting their first wild masterpieces, and a little plaque by the door that read, "Dedicated to Grandma Michelle, who taught us that love always pays forward." Well, I lost it right there in front of everyone. Sobbed into a tissue, mascara running like a crime scene. Michael handed me his handkerchief and whispered, "You know you're famous now, right?" "About damn time," I said, laughing through the tears. During the ribbon cutting, Bobby gave a short speech. "My grandmother taught me that luck doesn't just happen, you create it when you choose kindness, even when life's been cruel. She showed me what family really means. Who shows up, who stays, and who still believes in you after the storm." I clapped till my hands hurt, not from pride alone, but from relief. The world had righted itself. Months passed, peaceful and golden, the cottage filled with laughter and ocean air, and sometimes, when the nights were quiet, I'd light a candle for Grandma. "See," I'd whisper to her photo, "6 red-haired women in a family. You weren't lying, you old witch." Because now there were 6 again, my 2 daughters, me, 2 granddaughters, and soon little baby Michelle. The curse or blessing, depending how you looked at it, was complete. Michael would come up behind me, arms wrapping around my waist. Talking to the ghosts again, Red? Always, I'd say. They've got better manners than the living. He'd laugh, kiss my neck, and say, I hope I haunt you one day. Don't you dare. I'd reply, I'm finally getting some peace. The last story I'll tell you is this one. One evening, I went back to that same supermarket for old time's sake. Same clerk, still rocking glitter nails. Well, Miss Michelle, she said, grinning, you buying another lucky ticket? I thought for a moment, then smiled. No, honey, I've already won more than I bargained for. But as I turned to leave, I noticed the display by the register, bright new tickets, shiny as temptation itself. I picked one up anyway. $2, tradition's price. That night, I tucked it into a drawer beside my wedding ring, my husband's old watch, and a photo of Grandma. I didn't even bother to check the numbers. Some things you don't need to know to feel rich. Now, when people ask me for advice, which happens more often than you'd think, I tell them this. Don't wait for luck to find you. Make your own. And if someone shows you their love only when you've got something to give, well, bless them and move on. You've got better company waiting. Then I wink and add, oh, and never underestimate a red-haired woman, especially one with a past, a plan, and a spare lottery ticket in her purse. And every time the ocean roars outside my window, I imagine Grandma laughing somewhere beyond the waves, proud as sin that her granddaughter learned not just to survive, but to thrive with a little lipstick, a lot of nerve, and a heart too stubborn to quit. Because, darling, that's the secret of it all. Luck fades, beauty fades, even money fades. But courage, that only gets louder.